Okay.
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 So, who wants to
Wonderful.
start? Who wants to start?
I can start.
Okay.
I can say the general welcome to you all. It's been quite some time. Can't even remember when we had the last time. It was before Christmas, I think. And so let's start the new year with this new one. Personally, I want to wish you all a really very happy and very healthy new year with lots of healthy moments and lots of insights that go closer and closer towards the health that we all want. And so that's my little opening bit, and it's your turn now, Mick.
Yeah, I second that.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, as well as wishing you a very happy year, um, moment by moment. I just want to say a bit about how this particular topic came about. Um, and I've only really given it much thought in the last 10 minutes. um, and sometimes before a talk, I feel I need to prepare for it and so on. And this time, it just feels like there hasn't been any time. But where it came from was Katya and I were having a conversation at the beginning of the year, and we wondered what we were going to talk about on this next forum. And the way into that was Katya was saying what insights she'd had over the Christmas period and New Year period, and I said one of the insights I'd had. And for me, the thing that the thing that was really important for me over the Christmas period was there was a conversation I had with my family about my eldest son, and I think I've spoken about Theo before. And so there was this family conversation about my eldest son, and he wasn't there, but it was about him having just had a psychotic episode. And the way the conversation was going was talking about his illness, talking about his mental illness, and what what should be done about it, and what is anyone doing about it, and um, what causes it, and what's whether it's a chemical imbalance and so on. And as I was in this conversation, I realized that I haven't been in the field of mental health, so I don't know how to talk about it. But from my three principles understanding, or the kind of the the little three principles understanding I have, I knew that this isn't an illness. I knew that this isn't an issue of chemicals with Theo, and that was basically all I could say in the conversation. And I went to bed, having lots of thinking about it. I went to bed thinking, how could I have said it differently? How could I? Because something in me knows this is um, not the truth. And despite what my family was saying, what they have good arguments. They're very good arguers, my family, and they know stuff. They're academics. They know a lot of um, scientific stuff. Anyway, the next morning I woke up and I was reflecting on this, and just completely out of the blue, these words came into my head from that place where words come when you're not thinking. And um, the words were, the mind is before the body. and it was just a categorical statement that was, it had a feeling to it. It had a feeling that instantly my physical body changed. That's all I can say, is that, you know, I have my own health issues, which I've talked about, and I have symptoms which go up and down, and I have sensations, and I have discomfort, and I have all sorts of things which are really real. And in that moment, when I heard those words, the mind comes before the body. The feeling in my body completely changed. There was a relief. There was a relief of, when, you know, and I'm sure a lot of people who've been in the three principles have felt that. Hiya. I'm sure a lot of people who've been in the three principles have felt that, the feeling of that knowing, and the feeling of that relief, the feeling of that, the comfort. I mean, someone like Elsie Spittle calls it going home. That hasn't been my particular word, but it's a feeling of, when you feel the truth. When I feel the truth, I relax. I relax into this knowing. I relax into this. What was all that thinking about? Anyway, so that statement for me, over Christmas, you know, the mind comes before the body, and it was like, as soon as it had come, you know, it was like, then I started thinking about it, and I'm thinking, you know, how do I, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I start thinking about it, but when I went back to the feeling of, well, yeah, the mind comes before the body. It explains. If I'm in that feeling, it explains things to me. There's a kind of knowing that explains things. So anyway, this is just an intro to how Katya and I got to talk about, and she talked about her insight over Christmas, and the link was this sense of, so what's real? This sense of, when we talk about the body and physical health, you know, in the past, before I came across the principles, if ever I'd talked about health with people, and I knew that, you know, well, things can change and you can get better, and your mind has a lot to do with it. Your mind can help you or hinder you in your healing. I knew that, or, you know, I think most people have a sense that, you know, the stress in your life affects you and so on. But in many conversations I had with people about health, they would say, if they're talking about cancer, if they're talking about broken bones, if they're talking about, in my case, a sclerosis on the spinal cord, they would say, yes, but the body's really real. They would say, yes, but this is real. You can touch it. You can see an X-ray. You can have an X-ray. In my case, I had an MRI scan which showed there's this lump. There's this, you know, and there's this proof that it's real. So that for me is where this conversation came about, and I'm going to hand it over to Katya. And, you know, I mean, we have a couple of stories which add to the which open it to doubt, this thing we call real. And for me, when you open something to doubt, then it opens possibility. You know, when you doubt the conviction of one thing, then you open possibility for something else. So that's the, for me, that's the flavor of this conversation. Katja, do you want to unmute yourself?
You know, you had to do it because I did it myself.
Okay.
Phyllis just hinted me off that the feedback might come from me.
Oh,
So
okay.
so I muted myself, but then couldn't unmute myself again.
Okay.
So you're in charge of whether I speak or not, Mick. So there was so much in what you just said, you know, and it sort of also brought back to me the memory how it came about that we picked a subject, and there was a conversation where I randomly happened to say something like, there is no body. Well, I often sort of experienced in sleep or deep meditation or in a few occasions that actually, if I haven't got a perception, if I haven't got thought, I don't even notice my body. So I was randomly saying that, and it's my favorite subject. Is there really a body or not, right? There's so many contradicting, like, perceptions. And then there's what Mick just called when you suddenly just know that that doesn't really matter, where lots of thinking falls away from one moment to the next. And then the next moment you run into something else that's physical and it's real again. It just depends, seems to depend on the moment, that what kind of state are we in when we perceive something or nothing. That, I think, is where it really makes a difference between, is there really something there or not. It depends on from the perspective we look at. When that happens, whatever Mick was just describing, when you suddenly fall out of that concept of what the body really means to us, out of that relationship that we have with the body in the moment, we can really really like put a big question mark what real really means. In which moment do we look at that? Do we look at it from the perspective of being in pain, for example, and being in the middle of pain? Or do we look at it from watching somebody who's in pain? What's real? Where does it really feel real? I mean, it's funny because we're using it in our language a lot. We're saying really a lot to making it look more real. But that's just a habit of using language. And it's sort of suggesting that there could be something that we could perceive as real. And then in the end, it's always just a personal view. We cannot see anything but our personal view in the moment. And that depends on how and from what angle we look at things. And it's like a little situation that comes to mind, which only happened a few days ago, and I was mentioning it to Mick earlier today. You know those machines that where you rub like the vegetables over and then it cuts them? And I was preparing a vegetable soup, and I was cutting my veg, and I was in a little bit of a hurry, and I wasn't very present, and I was doing the carrots, and suddenly I thought, oh my God, this is dangerous, because this is like a real lethal little machine. And I didn't use the safety thing, but was holding the carrot directly in my hand, rubbing it over the knives. And then it was strange, because in the moment when I thought it was dangerous, in that moment, I tried to get a piece of carrot out of it. And in trying to avoid cutting myself, I actually did cut myself. And in 2 places, in my little finger here and in my thumb. And both were like dripping with red, fresh blood and really deep cuts. And I was looking at it and I thought, wow, okay. So I did what you do, put it in your mouth, and you said, okay, wow. And it didn't hurt. And it was the most amazing thing. I was looking at that and I thought, oh, maybe time to be present. Maybe time to really become present with what you're doing here. Anyway, so I just took a tissue and I rubbed it for a bit, and then I thought, okay, let's see how I can get on. And I just managed to get on, and I had a complete different quality of experience doing it. And I mean, surprisingly quick, it stopped bleeding. And I was just amazed. I was looking at it and I thought, wow, how quick it stopped, And then I kept cutting my vegetables. And in a certain moment, I noticed I'd completely forgotten about it. I just used my hands as if it wasn't there. And I thought, oh, great. So keep going. Like, just be normal with it. And I was really I was just very conscious with it, and it didn't matter. It's the most miraculous thing that happened to me, because I'll tell you in a minute what I used to do in the past with things like that, right? So now I was cutting my vegetables, and by the end of it, I noticed that both wounds were completely closed, and I thought, I don't need to do anything with that. I just knew I had to do nothing with it. Didn't need to do anything, and it's already healed. I mean, it's only 3-4 days ago, and it's you can hardly see it now. And what I want to say with that is that when we happen to have very little thinking about it, it's as if it's somebody else's body. It was like there was no personal relationship to the injury that I had thinking about, because it was clearly, there was like a trust, or even deeper, a faith there, that I knew that my body would be dealing with this better than I could. And there was no other thinking about it in the clear mind. And then afterwards, I nearly had this feeling of, did I really cut myself? Did that really happen? So this really, is it really real feeling was very strangely, how can I say it? I mean, I looked at it and I said, yeah, it did happen, but it didn't. It was a very strange feeling. Anyway, what I used to do in the past with things like that is would create a drama around it. I would have run to my boyfriend and say, look what I've done, and I'm bleeding, and I don't know if I can go on cutting my veg now, and would have created the whole thing around that. I would have wrapped it up with little plasters, and then it doesn't work properly, and then it would open again under the shower, and all these things would be in the follow-up, in the relationship to what happened on the physical level. Now all that didn't happen. It never bothered me once since that happened. Though there was a reality, there was a cut, because there was some blood there. So it was real, but it wasn't. And I think that's what's different. So there is something on the physical level. I have cut myself, but what I made of it was less than what I would have made of it without knowing about this understanding. I hope that makes sense with this story. What do you think, Mick? I mean, how can it be real when blood's dripping out of your fingers?
It makes complete sense to me. It makes complete sense in the sense, I mean, that what you're saying about what you make of it is, I mean, when we say something is really real, it's still what we make of it. And I mean, you gave a great example that how you would have been beforehand, you know, before you knew about the principles, you would have made of it a particular set of circumstance. You would have been running around, you would have been going to your boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. And that all comes out of what you make of it. And you know, I mean, it reminds me of, when I had an MRI scan to when I first started having my neurological issues, I went to get it checked out by a neurologist, and so they gave me an MRI scan, and the MRI scan showed that there was asclerosis, you know, breakdown of the nerve fibers. And so just like your cut, there was something real, there was something happened that you could see on the picture. And what the doctors made of it and what I made of it is completely dependent on my state of mind, on my thinking, on my understanding. And it was very interesting. I had a conversation with my acupuncturist about 6 months after I was diagnosed, and she said something really interesting. And you know, because the doctors wanted to say, you know, well, you have this, you have asclerosis, you know, you have this definite real thing. And my acupuncturist said, well, how do you know? And she said, right in this moment, how do you know? And not just in this moment, but in the moment that the scan was taken, how do you know that the vast majority of people don't have a sclerosis that looks exactly the same? Because the vast majority of people are wandering about, and maybe they've got sclerosis, but they never go for an MRI scan. So they've got nothing to show what's happening in the moment in the middle of their brains or their spinal cord. So how do we know? Because everything is in a constant state of flux in our bodies. The only, you know, when it's scientifically proved, or in the moment you cut your finger, it's scientifically visual that there is blood coming out, it's a snapshot in time. You know, it's a snapshot. And but what we make of that snapshot is what we call real. And that for me is really worth knowing. Is really worth knowing. And all sorts of you know, science, because you know, because science has been given the the domain of health generally in the world, generally. You know, I mean, apart from, let's say, several hundred years ago in China, when something like Chinese medicine, acupuncture would have a whole different theory, but what we now regard as really real is the scientific approach. And I'm not saying that Western medicine hasn't done phenomenal things and will continue to do phenomenal things, but I read an article this morning about addiction and showing how the experiments which prove that something like heroin is addictive, chemically addictive, was based on a rat being put into a cage and having a water bottle and a water bottle which had heroin in it. And the rat, sure enough, started having more of the heroin one and eventually died from too much of the bad stuff. And from that, there's a whole proof that heroin is addictive. It's a proof. But that experiment is taken in one context. And what we don't get to hear about is that there's another experiment which was done with a bunch of rats, a bunch of happy rats in a rat theme park, or in a cage that was like a theme park for rats, and they had everything they wanted. They had everything they could possibly want, and they were really happy. And then the same two bottles were introduced, the water and the heroin. And very interestingly, none of the rats started having a preference for the heroin one, and none of them died. They carried on drinking the water. So that, for me, that adds in this extra frame, if you like, which is always there. There's an extra frame of, if we expand how we're looking, if we expand what we're looking at, then the original thing has a different reality. I'm going to just unmute Phyllis because she's had her hand up for a while. Let's see. There you go. Phyllis, hello.
Hi. A couple things came to mind. The first was Katya was talking, and then as you were speaking. Our default is to heal. We're made to heal, and if we can keep our thoughts out of it, it happens. A broken bone, science says, and supposedly you can see it on X-ray again, a little snapshot, that within less than 24 hours, a broken bone will begin to heal. And the whole addiction, the whole Western medicine, and I'm not against it. I have family members in Western medicine. But Western medicine is designed to find out what's wrong with us. And so it's more likely that if we go in saying, this hurts, they'll find something that's wrong with it. I have a niece who's now in her 40s, who, when she was little, had nocturnal epilepsy. She'd have seizures at night, and they did brain scans, and they did this, and they did that. And they came back and said, well, there are a couple lesions that might be causing the problem. And at like 9 or 10 years old, she was like, well, open it up and see what's wrong. She wanted brain surgery for him to fix it. And I had an internist at the time who said, you need to explain to her that if you lopped open the brains of 100 people would have, or 99 of them would probably have lesions in their brains that are doing nothing. And there's no guarantee that the lesions that we're seeing are doing anything. And years later, it was probably 10 years ago, she had started having a different kind of seizure, and they determined they would do surgery. But it had nothing to do with the lesions from when she was little. Those weren't even there anymore. So it just depends. And they had her in the hospital. She had seizures after the surgery, and they had her in the hospital on observation, both with little electrodes in her head, for like 30 days, and she had no seizures. And she's had no seizures since then, but they didn't think that what they did had solved anything. So, and she started out keeping a log of every day that she had seizures, she wrote it down. Or anytime she had a seizure, she wrote it down. And I suggested at that time, what about keeping track of the times that you feel good, your good days, all your good times, et cetera, et cetera. She's had no seizures in 9 years. And no change in what they see in the scans. Yet she no longer has seizures. So again, is the body there? Is it not there? Did it heal itself? But I think ultimately, whatever form the body exists in, its default is to heal itself. Without sitting there going, like when Katya cut her hand on the mandolin, going, heal, heal, heal. But at the same time, so often we say, well, and I don't know about anybody else, but I've heard people have a little sniffly nose and it's, oh no, I'm getting a cold, I'm going to have bronchitis, I'm going to get pneumonia. And sure enough, it falls out. And they'll say, well, see, it happened again. And it's like, well, you talked about it for a week.
And thought about it for a week.
And if we just look at it and go, oh, I sneezed. I sneezed. Where's the Kleenex? And don't get our head involved with it. I think our body does what it's supposed to do.
Perfectly.
It was just fun. It was fun to hear Katya's thumb and little finger getting cut and a blood. And again, it healed because you left it alone mentally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's for sure. I mean, like for me, it really looks like what it looks like for me now is that stuff happens in our personal reality. It happens. Like I cut my fingers, but how quickly it passes through my experience is what I'm in charge of. And that's really what I get to experience. And so the quicker I can allow things to pass through, the quicker the fresh healing thoughts can come in, because that's all it is. It's just a fresh way of seeing the same thing. And the less thinking I have, the more that quality thinking comes directly from source. So I could see how it helped me to become present. So it served me. And then I never had any pain. While, that sort of cut was deep and bleeding like it would have been painful. I mean, the fingertips are extremely sensitive, Everybody who gets, when they take blood from the fingertips, that's extremely painful normally. I hate it when they do that, but it never even hurt. That's what made me curious. That's where I think that when we stay like aware with our bodies, to always question our experiences, that's where we open the door towards healing, because we don't know what kind of thought we get. We don't know how quickly we can learn. But questioning the reality in the moment, always leads to thinking that's closer to the source, closer to truth. And that can only be helpful. I mean, it can never harm us. So my tendency, and that's the way how I see all this stuff now, is that I just, to the best of my abilities, try to stay aware, to question it. And I'm always fascinated again and again how real it looks when you run into something.
I've just seen Jana has just raised her hand. So I've unmuted you, Jana.
Oh, Jana also asked earlier whether I was less stressed about it. I surely was not stressed about it at all.
Well, I just want to say, when I studied applied kinesiology a few years ago, it was a combination of chiropractic and Chinese medicine. And with my Western medicine background, it was something quite remarkable, because I had to leave that training behind and learn to understand the body from a different perspective. As you said, Katja or Meg, at the beginning, it's a matter of perspective whether the body is real or not. And what I saw was that, for example, seeing demonstrations on people who had multiple sclerosis, and they had paralysis in a leg, after an hour session, the person went from kind of unable to raise the leg more than 5 centimeters, progressed to raising the leg by 30 or 40 centimeters. And the whole understanding of how the body can heal under the Western medicine is like putting limitations on what can actually be achieved. You know, like we have these miraculous healing from cancer or something really unusual. Well, if you look at it from a different system, like from Chinese medicine point of view, it's a matter of energy flow. So if you unblock some energy lines or meridians, how they call it, and the energy starts to flow better than it did before, many symptoms disappear or less in a matter of, I don't know, minutes, hours. And Western medicine doesn't know how to explain that. But that's just a different way how to look at the body and how to work with the body than Western medicine does. So I believe it's the more we know, or the way we perceive the body and understand, the more perspective we have, the more, I would say it, the less surprised we can be with what the body can do, how it can heal, and maybe what's possible. That's how I would say it. So many people, when they go to the doctor and they are given diagnosis, they become fearful and they, stress out about the symptoms, and they feel, it's getting worse and it will only get worse. While from like the Chinese point of view, it's a blockage which may pretty much, the symptoms may go away if the energy flow is restored. So I think for me, after learning the kinesiology, it just, the whole thing opened up to different understanding that, once you are diagnosed with something, even if it's called chronic disease, it doesn't have to be really chronic disease. It can, there is always way back to better energy balance and way back to health. So that's what I wanted to say.
Well, I'm very glad you mentioned that because that's actually exactly hitting the point. It's whether or not we see a reality is like a moment. It's like it's a moment, and when a diagnosis is done or made, it's a momentary snapshot, something that might just be passing through.
Yeah.
And if somebody, for example, doesn't believe the diagnosis, the chances are that they just allow the healing process that's happening naturally in the background just to move through. And my mom, she had a very painful chronic foot problem, and the doctor diagnosed it as can't remember what it was now, but he pretty much said to her that her foot, the little bones in her foot are so arthritic and they're so damaged that she will never ever walk again properly, and that she would need to have an operation to fuse the bones, and that would be only way without being in pain. And she came to Spain to visit me, and I think I've shared this before, but to just make it short, she came to visit me, and I took her to a therapist that I trust very much, and he sort of did some hands-on therapy with her. And within one session, my mom could walk without pain. And I said to her, look, see, this is not there. There might be a diagnosis there might be a physical condition there, but whether that really leads to you having problems or not, it's a complete different story. So she started to doubt the doctor, and that was really good. I was really pleased with my mom, because she's, from that generation where they have a white coat and they say there is something wrong with you there, so you believe it and you keep walking around with the problem. And now the problem was gone, and she couldn't believe it. And it took her a while to really find her own knowing in that. And in between times, she walks around without pain, although the doctor keeps insisting on the diagnosis because he keeps looking at the x-rays. Mm-hmm. But mom's now sort of, and I help that, of course, a little bit, to prompt her not to believe so much what they say. And it's really true that she can walk without pain, though it doesn't really look like that would be possible. And then in the kinesiology, I can't say the word, kinesiology, and in the Chinese medicine, it's all about energy. And what's the energy? Thought. It's the thought that we come up with that limits our being, our abilities that we have as a neutral being. And, just make it short, because I know there's some raised hands there waiting for their turn. But what really blew me away was I was speaking to a nurse. She worked in operating theaters, and she told me some stories about people, how flexible we all are under the effects of general anesthetics. We can do stretching, we can do splits, we do movements with our bodies that we would never be able to do in the waking state. And she said, on the operating table, once we've been lifted from the one bed to the other, they do really strange movements with our bodies that are practically impossible.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yes, that's fascinating. And I heard George Pransky say that in an interview or in a webinar somewhere, that he met a physician that told him the same. So that's a confirmation of, in two sources now, that we are able to do all those things under general anesthetic, and that the limitations are only coming from our mind, whether we can do it or not. And in the same direction, there was an article I read not long ago about stretching. And the stretching actually is nothing to do with the ability of the muscle to stretch. So the physical ability of a muscle to contract and to relax is never at question when we have difficulties with stretching. And I'm a very, I don't stretch very well. But in the article, they explained that rather than the physical ability of the muscle, what needs training is our mind to know that the muscle can do it. And the pain reaction, it's got nothing to do with the muscle not being able to do it, but it's got to do with showing us the danger that when we overdo it, that we can't, I can't remember exactly, but that we can't overcome it through the physical exercise, but we have to do the mental change in order to become more flexible and stretching. I thought it was so fascinating. I mean, there's a lot of thinking manifested in our body that gives us shape and that gives us the flexibility, and all we are conditioned to believe is that that is how we are as physical bodies. And I believed that for ages, and now I'm sort of questioning it a little bit, and I'm a little bit more brave to do more stretching now.
So does that mean that you are as physically flexible as you are mentally flexible?
Yeah, it's a mirror of that. It's just a mirror. It's the body becomes a mirror of what's happening in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, how could it be that an 80-year-old can do splits, and on the operating table?
Yeah.
She wouldn't be able to do that. And I mean, there's a few people, especially now in recent years, I've seen it more and more. Lots of people older age also start to keep fit with yoga and things like that, which shows that everybody can do it. But that under general anesthetic, all of us can do it. I thought that's quite fascinating.
I'm going to unmute Chris. Hang on. Okay. Can you say something?
No, we can't hear you.
Okay. Oh.
I think Chris is still muted.
Oh, hang on. Where's she gone?
I think she's lost the video. She's still there.
Oh, there she is. Hang on. Hello. Did you want to say something, Chris? Is your audio not working?
No.
No, can't hear you, I'm afraid.
Oh, try unplug that. Try and unplug.
Do you want to type a chat into the thing if you've got a question or a comment, or type something in?
Oh. No, but that's very fascinating how in different cultures we're seeing different ways with the body, like in the Chinese medicine with the meridians. And once there's a blockage cleared and the free flow is back, then instantly the condition is gone. And in previous meetings, I have shared quite a few, like both of us, all of us really have shared, there is. Okay.
Okay. Chris is saying no. Chris is saying no question here. Okay. Okay,
Oh, that's Chris
I'm
from
gonna go to
Hamburg.
Angela.
Yes,
And
okay. We got two Chris's, Mick. That's the confusion here.
yeah, Angela, I'm going to unmute you.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Oh, can we?
Yes.
I've
Can you hear me?
just seen there is a message privately from Chris.
Oh,
Mick.
to you.
Can we
To you.
just quickly, Angela, do you mind if we quickly just
No,
go for
not
that?
at all.
She's right, and I remember hearing years ago about the Filipino surgeons who could put their hands into a person's body. Does anyone else remember hearing that? Yes, I do. Yes, and they sort of said that it's not possible, but I doubt it now with what, I start to see. I think when people think it's possible, then it's possible. And actually, I happen to know somebody who does psychic surgery, and I trust the guy. I think that he's genuine, and I myself had experiences when he put his healing hands on me that miraculous things happened, and that we saw the most beautiful white light. And I think this most beautiful white light must be when our mind totally clears, right? And it's what Sydney Banks also described, that it had healing abilities, that bright light, when he had his enlightenment experience. And so I think that when the mind relaxes and pure mind, our mind relaxes, and when pure mind can come through, that's where miracles happen. So do I think those Filipino surgeons could have done miraculous healings? I'm pretty sure they did. I don't know about you, Mick. What do you think about that?
I've never experienced it myself, but I know people who've gone to John of God in, I think he's in South America, and they've witnessed pretty miraculous things. The people who actually went, they didn't experience miracles themselves, but they did see some pretty amazing things. And I think that, the body of, if we're talking about body of evidence, there's there's enough people saying, well, this was my reality, this is what I saw. So I don't know. I've unmuted Angela. If you'd like to
Yeah, I'd like to share a story.
go on.
And I think Phyllis already knows it. My husband was born with a brain tumor, and they removed it, but it grew back, and they removed it, and it grew back. And when he was in his early 20s, the doctor told him he wouldn't live to be 30, and that was the first and the last time he ever hit somebody. Because he said, you are not going to tell me how long I'm going to live. And in his early 30s, he went to China. So this is why this story, well, of course, the living proof is sitting right next to me here, but the China story ignited this sharing. He went to China to a Qigong center, initially to help somebody else, to assist somebody else who was ill. And at that time, the tumor was still there. And this Chinese Qigong master asked him to, he knew the tumor was there. It wasn't visible, but he knew. And he asked to visualize himself as water, being fluid. Like we're talking about the body not being real, but just a fluent thing. And from one moment to the other, the tumor disappeared and it never grew back again. So now he's the master of no brain, this husband of mine.
Of no brains.
He's got a quiet mind.
Right.
And years later, maybe it was probably how much? 10 years later, because of all the removing of the tumor in his neck, which it was on the base of his skull, and it had grown into his spine, but obviously it was now no longer there, but the spine was still damaged from all the surgery, and well, there was some sort of misconstruction there. And he was on the golf course playing golf, and then the vertebrae in his neck they were too tight around the nerves, and he fell down and he was paralyzed. So a surgeon took out 6 vertebrae from the base of his skull to his spine. That would, well, they thought it would leave him paralyzed, but being the Qigong master he now is, he just, after a week he got up and he's walking.
Wow.
So, and he's playing golf and everything, and he's just keeping his head up, and I don't know, it's possible. Anything is possible.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because
It's beautiful that,
beautiful.
I mean, we can't see him, but we can see you looking at him. And so, hello.
He's alive.
He's
And
alive,
kicking.
he's really there.
Alive and kicking. Yes, well, that's an amazing story, and you know, it reminds me of the story. The guy who wrote the placebo. You are the placebo. What's his name again?
Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, he writes about a similar thing when he had an injury on his spine that everybody thought he would need surgery with, and he just got up and after so many days and just walked, and everything was fine without any surgery. And I mean, I find it fascinating, and I admire people that can have such a clear mind. My mind's not that clear, but I can see and I can feel and sense and know the possibility of it. And that's enough actually for me to help myself with all my things that are going on. I just had a message from Susanne, and she said she had an experience, or she tried it myself, and I think it was relating to the psychic healing. So I don't know, Mick, you're in charge of the other hands. I don't know who was first. Or
Was there another hand?
Hands.
Oh, May. I forgot May. Sorry. I'll do Suzanne, unmute Suzanne first in that moment, and I'll come back to May. Sorry. Hello.
I was just thinking about many years ago, there was Stephen Turoff in Denmark, who is what you call a psychic healer, very much similar to what you hear about the healers from the Far East. And I went there with some issue with my abdomen, and it only took, I think, 6 minutes or something. I was to lay down, and he just took his hand and put it inside my abdomen. And I could feel it, and I could hear it. It was really, really weird. Never been experiencing anything like that. And then he also went into the neck. I have some problems with my neck, and he just knew that, and he went into the area of my heart as well. And afterwards, when he came into the abdomen, he just put his hand just like this, and when I looked down, I had the nicest really scar when like when you've been operated. This red scar with little dots, where you have been sewn. Is that the right word in English? Mm-hmm. And it was like red and a little above my skin. And I remember going home to my some family and showing them, and I just said, we don't believe this. And within 2 or 3 days, it was all gone, you know. Really weird experience. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. I think that answers your question, Chris.
But there is a really nice video on the internet showing, I think it's quite famous, showing a hospital in China, a woman who is having a cyst or a cancer lump in her female organs. And there are 3 healers healing her within just some minutes. And you can see it, the lymph, there's a machine where it's, you know, like when you do, what is that?
A scan.
A scan, yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see it on the photo while they're healing, it kind of is disappearing. It's getting smaller and then it kind of disappears. So obviously, you know, there's a lot of things going on in our world, much more than we can see with our eyes and hear with our ears. Definitely. Yeah. I remember some time ago, I had so much headache. I was sitting and working, and it was just almost unbearable, the headache. And at the end, I kind of said to myself, okay, I want to listen, you know. I just sat up, nothing else I could do, and listened. And it was like going into my body and viewing my body from the outside, that I was kind of not my body. I was much more than my body. And then I saw like this area where I had all this pain, like little children really crying to be seen or to be heard. And by just taking my attention to the pain and listening to these little children like being in pain, or myself, you know, like the cells as little children being in pain, when I just listened and I was just present, within less than 2 minutes, the pain had totally disappeared. I remember you saying, Katja, that we should not think so much about our symptoms, but I just had to listen at the end. It was like this little children just crying and crying for attention, you know, to be heard on some level. And when I just put my attention there, they were heard, and all the pain disappeared right away. I don't know.
But that's really interesting. I mean, it's a beautiful example. And when I have heard Katja say, you know, we don't need to think about the pain or think about the symptoms. We don't. And you weren't thinking about the symptoms. You were being with the pain.
Yeah.
You weren't thinking about them. You were being, as you said, you were being present. And that's a very different feeling.
Yeah, without having
thought,
fear or labeling it in somehow.
Yeah. Or without thinking about what you need to do, or you just, you know, it's like if we are with our children and they're having a tantrum, you know, and we do sit down with them and just be present with them. We don't have to think a lot.
Jack Pransky is saying a lot about deep listening, and I felt that this was kind of like deep listening to my body and to myself, and I just found that so important to do that, you know, listen to my body, although I'm not my body.
Yeah, but listening to your body in that state is a different thing than judging your body or trying to change something. By Chris said goodbye. You know, I didn't hear the beginning of what you said, but about giving it in a way the attention that that it's there, being acknowledged as something that's okay.
Mm.
That comes from wisdom, you know.
Yeah, it's like, it's more like being present with what is, and just accepting it.
Yes,
Yeah.
without accepting it. It's just it is being accepted in the same moment, because it's a wisdom clarity thought that comes with that. That's okay, whatever is happening in the body. It just doesn't make any difference. The difference is that we giving things meaning as if it means something. But when we find ourselves being okay, like I was completely okay that I cut my fingers, I never even experienced any pain because there was no illusion. There was an occurrence, but it had no meaning. And even me now giving it the name occurrence is like, it's my personal way of looking at it now afterwards, because I can only make sense of it through my mind. But in the moment, it was the strangest, very neutral experience, as if it didn't happen, but it did happen.
I think it's very important that we don't take it for truth. If other people tell us that we have something, you know, some labeling of, or we do that ourselves, label our bodies that we have a headache or we have an illness, or it's so important to get rid of, in my opinion, of that labeling, because that makes our body in some way that I don't know, kind of live up to that state of what we put on it. It's like that we're kind of putting a poisoning arrow on our body, on that part of our body that we label as that we have a certain illness, or we have a headache, or whatever.
I completely agree with that. It's just done innocently though, right? The medical field tries to help people, and in their innocence they were seeing that there are similarities between different symptoms, so they started giving things names so that they could relate to it better, and the whole culture came from that. You've got this, you've got that, I've got this, you've got that, and then there's thousands. I mean, it leads to, for example, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and now when I try to get more into contact with people that I could help with my work, right? And I'm finding millions and millions of forums where people talk about their daily pains, about what kind of symptoms have I got today, and they're observing their body like I did too when I was in the middle of it. I didn't know any better, but we're not serving ourselves with believing what doctors say, and we're not serving ourselves with busying ourselves with whatever is going on in our bodies. It just is what it is, and it's like our own existence. It's an experience that's moving through, and our body is just the way it shows up in the form.
And we really never know in what direction life will guide us. I had a client who was, or not a client, yeah, someone visiting me in my studio, and an older lady, a nurse, and she used to work at a big hospital with cancer patients. And she said she remembered this lady coming in having cancer, and they opened her, and then they kind of closed her, and they said, well, we cannot do anything more for you. And they gave her maybe a few months, you know, to live. And she said, well, I really want to go to Spain with my husband. Can I do that, you know? And they said, okay, of course you can go, you know. And she went to Spain, And I think she just went away from all the problems and just relaxed, just you know, went into the sun. And when she came back home 1 month later, there was no cancer anywhere. Yeah. Well,
I think it's
I wonder
the
what she made of
number
that.
one medicine.
yeah, to let go of all the.
Go to Spain, number one medicine.
Go to Spain. Yeah, it must be Spain. Yes.
No, but it's relaxing, isn't it? It's relaxing, being okay with what is, and then allowing yourself to live, and allowing life to come through you and do the things you enjoy, and it can always shift then. And I don't know who's in charge of that. I mean, we seem to be living, we were born, we grow up, we're aging, I'm going through changes now, you know, I'm going to be having, you know, going through the changes the physical body does, growing older and older, and then suddenly one day we're finished. Who's in charge of that, or why that is, God knows.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't know. Huh?
Quite.
Yes. So.
No, we're not finished, Katja.
Sorry?
There's nothing as finished. We're not finished.
But the physical body is, right?
Oh, yeah.
The really
the
real
experience
bit.
that we are living. Yes. Sorry, Mick, can you say that again?
I said the really real bit is finished.
Yes. The real bit is finished.
I'm
yes.
gonna
Truth is not finished.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Maybe it all starts when our body dies. Who knows?
I'm gonna unmute May because she's been waiting. Hang on.
Hi.
Hello.
Well, actually, I lowered my hand because the discussion that went on after I raised my hand has answered my question. Which, you know, really, I just wanted to comment that surely there must be some situations where we do need to pay attention to reality, to what's actually happening. But I think the discussion, particularly what Susanna was sharing there about, you know, being present, you know, with whatever's showing up, is the approach. But I will ask a very specific question because I'm curious, having heard all these amazing stories that people have shared. For me, it seems, maybe this is just my thinking, but my experience anyway, is a weak part of my body is my teeth. And, you know, when I get toothache, I mean, I really just do end up going to the dentist. I don't know if anybody has any other approach to problems with teeth.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for bringing up that there is conditions where we want to go and see a doctor. But what's important in that is that we are doing that from an inspiration, right? Because when we listen to that inspiration, it will always take care of us in the best way. And sometimes we need to go and see a doctor. And I also take antibiotics, or I go to the dentist. There's nothing wrong with going to the dentist. Because it's all part of mind. The important bit is that we listen to wisdom in the moment, and when we do, sometimes we don't need to go to a doctor. Sometimes we know, we just know, and sometimes raising our level of consciousness through a fresh thought that comes automatically and just by itself does the healing. Like a little bit like my 2 wounds didn't need covering or cleaning or anything, because I was so present and knew what I had to be doing with it. But let's say I had cut off my whole finger, I'd probably end up going to the hospital and they sew it back on again, right? So both ways, there's nothing wrong with it, and it's important to listen to that. And in another meeting, I was sharing with I think it was in the summer, I was walking along the beach and I had this stabbing pain in my chest. And for a first moment, it felt really like, oh my God, this is something serious, right? And instantly I woke up to, who says it's serious? And I became aware that it was me making meaning of something. And then the next thought popped in and said to me like, yeah, but you really want to be present to be really hearing wisdom in this, whether you really have to turn around and go back to the car or call an ambulance or whatever, or walk further away from civilization, which we were on the way, walking away from the car, right? Mm-hmm. And in that moment, there was just clarity there. And I really knew with clarity that I could just walk on, and I did. And within a few minutes, that pain disappeared. Mm-hmm. But if I wanted to listen to that thought, I would probably have missed the wisdom that comes with this very, very calm little voice. Mm-hmm. That could have said to me, better turn around, go back to the car, or do something, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the important bit is that we can see the quality of those different states. That when there's the quality is fear-based and thinking-based, habitual, when things repeat itself, or whether there's the clarity with which we just know. We want to follow that knowing. And if it takes us to the doctor, I mean, I'm grateful for doctors. My boyfriend, he had a slip disc here in the neck, and he had to have it removed because otherwise he would have ended up paralyzed. And I don't know if he would have had the mental capacity like Angela's husband, who was able to, to get through this in the way he did. So I'm very glad for Western medicine, and it's a very important aspect, and especially with dentists. I mean, there's one thing I read half a year ago, probably, that was in the press, that they have now found a way that teeth can rebuild themselves if they have the right materials. And I can't exactly remember, but there's a procedure which would rebuild the natural material of the tooth. And they have created they have registered what's that called? The
patent. The
patent, yeah. And at the moment it's not available for people yet, but it will be. Mm. And so I sort of speculated. I thought to myself, okay, if that takes 10 years, I'm all right. I can get all my teeth redone then. But it's not yet. So at the moment, actually, I lost the filling, and I want to call the dentist. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if somebody else has other experiences with teeth.
Well, I'd like to say something slightly. I mean, for me, just the pain. The closer the pain gets to, the further north the pain goes. The closer it gets to my eyes seems to be indicative of how seriously I take it. Mm-hmm. So if I have a pain in my knee, which I have periodically, or if I, in the past, I had a lot of knee trouble, and I would sometimes feel it and sometimes not feel it, but it might always be there. And if I, a few years ago, if I had a really bad toothache, then it would take me over. That was my experience of it, of being taken over. Or some of the headaches I've had recently, say in the past couple of months, I've had headaches which have they appear to take me over until I start investigating that very thing. Am I being taken over by this? Or if I come back to that that insight that I had about, mind comes before body, where am I in relation to the pain? Has the pain got me? or am I a being experiencing these sensations which are pain? And as soon as I start experiencing them as sensation, they change. Even the really bad one, even the, I mean, for me, it's like, I've had headaches where you can't think. Or that's what it feels like. And then, but also in the midst of that, if I question that thing of I can't think, well, who's thinking I can't think? There's always a different perspective. It's nothing to do with whether I go to the dentist or not. But certainly for headaches, whether I take the paracetamol or whether I take the ibuprofen, is very, a few years ago, my wife said, oh, you must have a bad headache because you're taking ibuprofen, because it's so rare for me to take thing, because I'm I don't know. There's something. Katja plays with the word willingness, and for me, I play with the word experiment. I like to watch what happens. So if there is a huge pain, I know that pain isn't going to last, even though it seems like it's going to last forever in the moment. I have for probably as long as I can remember. I mean, probably certainly 15, 20 years, I've had quite severe tinnitus, and it's probably got worse in the last 10. And people ask me, is it there all the time? And I say, yeah, it's there all the time. It's like a vacuum cleaner or like an airplane taking off. And is it really there all the time? Well, it's there when I'm listening to it. And it does have effect on my hearing, so that I can't hear certain frequencies because this noise overshadows. And I've been very present with it at times. I've been very present with it, and I've heard it change. It's never gone away, but it changes. And a lot of the time I'm not aware of it. And for me, this is like part of my experimentation. It's my laboratory of perception. How I relate to this occurrence, as Katja's calling it. It's happening. And okay, if I was maybe if I was a Qigong master, I might be able to get rid of it. But for now, there's something there that's it's just there. Maybe it's serving me in some way that I haven't yet discovered. Anyway, that was a very long-winded answer to toothache.
Well, I think what I'm taking away from this is certainly some inspiration to take perhaps a bit of a different approach next time, which hopefully isn't for a while. I've got something so. And the other thing that's kind of coming to me is that how the wisdom for me about any particular issue is going to be different. It could well be different one day to the next day, couldn't it? Because my mind and my state will be different. And equally, if I have the same symptoms as somebody else, our respective wisdoms about what to do or not do would also be quite different, most likely, which is turning upside down the whole orthodox medicine thing that Katja was outlining earlier on. As we take our own power back for our health, tune into our own wisdom, then it becomes a very individual thing for each of us in the moment.
You know what comes to my mind when Mick was talking about the experiments that would determine whether or not heroin creates addiction, they base that on a lot of assumptions. And when people get diagnosed with one thing and the other, and it looks the same, that's a lot of assumptions too. Then again, it seems to be that like similar thinking can create similar symptoms in the body, and Louise Hay is like a master of pointing that out. And I myself have seen thinking causing certain styles of symptoms, let's call them, right? And I think it's truth, but the assumption that means it's all the same for all of us, that's where I think it's a dangerous thing, because we can all wake up to different things within our personal minds in different times, and then have a different result in the body than the other person. So was it created in the same way to start with or not? I don't see any sense anymore in analyzing that. I just see there's an experience. It shows up in the physical, and it's been created by an innocent usage of my mind, because it has taken me away from the purest health that is who I really am. That's it. And I feel I don't need to know any more than that. But that's just me, right? It's just the way, like Mick mentioned, this willingness to question it. That's for me the big key. It's just the big key is to really look at that. Thank you for.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved what you said, May.
Yeah.
I think that taking your own power back and resting in your own wisdom, and again, it's what Katja is saying about the Louise Hay, this means this. Not again in the same with Louise Hay. It's like, she's done an incredible service to humanity, and if it doesn't come back to our individual power or individual wisdom, if it becomes another model or technique, then it's not going to fit everyone. And for me, what the amazing thing that Sid Banks pointed to was how this applies to everyone, because they're fundamental principles, they're fundamental building blocks to our reality. And it's not a model, it's not a theory. Anyway, I see we're running at 9:30, and
yes, so to summarize it, it's really up to us to take our own power. That's what's real in it all. Yeah, I think it's very hopeful, isn't it? That we can do that, and that we're okay no matter what.
well, I think there's been a lot of different examples that people have given of possibility. You know, what is possible in the real world. You know, what's really real. What's Angela's husband or Suzanne's psychic surgery. I mean, those are kind of on the for my experience, those are kind of on the edge. But what we each individually live with, we can experience our edge. We can experience our edge expanding. We can experience our edge going into the unknown, and that's really exciting if we're prepared to look. Yeah. So I hope everyone's...
I just want to share this.
Go on.
Jana saying to all, I'm looking forward to one day when growing our teeth back is normal and we consider having fillings done as ancient as letting blood. That's a very profound hope, and a great closing note, because we wanted to keep it a bit of fun today because we didn't want it to become too serious. It's a bit mind-blowing to say we're not really real, but I hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you so much for taking part. I really look forward to the next one. We haven't got a date yet, but we'll let you know. So thank you. Shall we unmute everybody for a moment?
Okay, hang on.
Some of us had to go already.
Okay, everyone is now as you can probably hear.
So we can say goodbye, everybody. Good night. Good morning.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Okay. I stopped the recording.